Today, Vivziepop's channel put out its latest animated project, the Homestuck pilot, with the hopes that through commercials and merchandise, they can raise enough money to create more episodes of the show. This seems to be a confusing project to a lot of people, and though I am no expert on it and was rather confused myself at first, I was able to do a little research that really recontextualized the show and what it's going to be, so let's break it all down. First off, Homestuck isn't an original story of Vivziepop's like we got with Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, or any of the previous one-off shorts on her channel. Instead, Homestuck seems to be Vivziepop's attempt to grow her studio and business outside of her original IP. Instead of hiring someone to create a new show, however, Vivziepop wanted this first project to be something with a built-in fanbase, but which didn't have its own animated series yet. Before this, she was able to strike a deal with Andrew Hussey, the creator of Homestuck, and the two were able to produce this new series together, starting with the pilot. Homestuck is a long-running webcomic from 2009 to about 2016 that has over 8,000 pages of story, and that is a pretty big thing to adapt. And even beyond trying to get the scope of that larger story into an animated form, the series is also adapting something that isn't like a traditional webcomic the way we think of them. Now, the pilot, from what I understand, is a bit confusing for new viewers, and according to comments on the pilot, this was actually the case for the original comics. The comics, from what I've been able to look up, started off very simple, humorous, and not so serious, but over time eventually became a multi-dimensional epic that seems to be what the show is building into. On the surface, the story of the pilot is very simple, with it focusing more on the introduction of its characters instead of the real overarching plot. But the episode ends with a hint about all the big things that are going to happen, and a montage of what those things would be that are likely very familiar to readers of the comic. Before it gets there, however, we just get introduced to John, a young dude who likes video games. The story starts on his birthday, and across the episode you see him interacting with his three best friends, giving you a chance to meet each one of them, though he primarily talks to these people online as his gamer buds. These friends of John are David, Rose, and Jade, but it might be easier to think of them with their color associations that we see in the ending theme at the end of the episode. John, our main nerd, is cast in blue, David is the too cool for school best friend cast in red, Rose is the goth girl in purple, and Jade is the more upbeat girl cast in green. These colors are alluded to here and there in the pilot, but with them all being seen side by side with these colored outlines in the end credits. Unfortunately, to make the show feel a bit more like a webcomic, the animation is very much in black and white, with just a little bit of color here and there to make certain things pop, especially in the background. But because of this, I think we're a bit robbed of how much personality these characters have, as part of the reason people like such an animated format is how color can inform everything in the scene. For a webcomic, especially one based off of old RPG video games, black and white is okay. And this animated series does of course have some color to make it pop still, but to keep that webcomic look, they use it minimalistically. The character they emphasize with color the most is Rose, whose entire room is cast in a purple hue, and call me simple-minded, but even just having that full tint really helped her character and scene stand out to me. It's just harder to sell that goth girl idea without the colors that the goth girl would be using to give that impression to you. I hope in future episodes they get more intense with the colors this way for David and Jade as well, as it's a simple way to add some color to the series while still keeping a monochromatic webcomic feel. But for the record, color aside, the animation for this pilot is actually really fun. It's a lot more smooth and honestly a lot more like a modern webcomic than the original format, but it's still able to use that simple black and white art style in order to make some really cool scenes that pop when they get into some full motion animation. Now, the pilot focuses on John's birthday, I said, with a big build up to him receiving a very particular game that will apparently be the backbone of the series as far as I've been able to read. I went back and looked at the original comic for those curious about it, as it's right on the Homestuck website, and the comic also starts out with this particular birthday. But it presents the same story in a way that feels more interactive. The comic has mini animations that make it feel like an old Game Boy game, referenced in the show as a Game Bro, which is a great brand someone should actually produce games under. The comic even presents itself as one of those choose-your-own-adventure RPG-style games, with the text giving you just one option each time that continues the story, instead of branching off into different directions like a real game might. Basically, it's just a unique way to use a next page function in a way that feels like you're participating in the story instead of just watching it. A story that, as it builds, is really just about characters themselves playing a video game. In keeping with the early video game theme, you also spend a lot of time just examining your own room up close and collecting information that I imagine will be really useful later in the story, the same way it is in a video game of this sort. The pages use a really simple Microsoft Paint style with a big use of narrative text instead of just character dialogue, as well as character dialogue being expressed in chat logs on screen instead of through speech bubbles. Looking at all of this and then seeing the animation of the Homestuck pilot, this is a wildly different idea of what we normally think of as adapting a story, and from the developmental standpoint, this kind of project actually seems really interesting. Normally, I have a hard time deciding if I want to play a game or read the comics before watching the adaptation because I don't like to be spoiled, but so much of what's interesting about this pilot is how it's going to take these video game ideas and turn it into an animated series. Now, the pilot, as I said, is building up to John getting the big game, which is called Suburb, which is meant to sound like the word suburb, and with the box looking a bit like a Sims type game. Now, up until getting this game, the new viewers were probably confused like I was, just not really getting why this build-up is going to be so important. And the episode ends before they even get to play the game. But to make it clear that this is all just set up for this game that will be the actual backbone of the series, the episode ends with Jade talking about all the adventures they can have on the game together, and John saying that it sounds almost like she can see the future. This is a nod to a lot of fans knowing where this is going because they read the comic. And with that in mind, we suddenly get a montage of a lot of weird characters and things that apparently are going to happen in the show. References to big events and fan favorite characters that will be making their way into the story that we can expect to see. Once I understood what this was, it made a lot more sense, but it also felt like the episode had built up to just getting ready to explain what its actual premise is. This is in some way part of the tradition of the comics, but for those who want to get a little more insight, this is what I can piece together about the Suburb game so far. From what I understand, it's a bit like The Sims, kind of designing and editing homes and worlds, but it ends up having effects on reality, such as being able to edit the homes of other people, and also pulling in the meteors that we see coming towards the planet in the pilot. So it's a game that has potentially fun and positive effects on reality, but it also has the risk of destroying it. Along the way, apparently this game and the stuff they are playing will allow them to create their own worlds as well, and there will be alternate timelines from what I gather, and a lot of crazy cool twists. To be honest, I wasn't quite on board when I watched the pilot at first. Not that it was bad, but I didn't really get it. But I'm the kind of person who really likes diving into a world and a fandom with so much out there already. With that in mind, I might get some stuff wrong, so feel free to share what you like in the comments down below, and keep an eye out for more videos as I plan to dive really deep in the comic version of the show and make videos with each episode talking about how this sort of thing played out in the comics specifically. Maybe even doing sort of playthroughs of the comics with the animation side by side. But let me know what you guys love about the show, as this is the kind of show where the fandom is just as fascinating as the project. But before you go, if you want even more indie animation goodness, today I'm shouting out Monkey Wrench. It's a free show right here on YouTube, but if you're the kind of person that likes to throw money around at an indie animation, they need support to help produce more episodes. They have a solid setup on Patreon where they are raking in cash, but indie animation of this quality costs a lot. So if you go watch the show and you love it, donating leads to more episodes coming, and the story is amazing so far. I know a lot of you like it when two dudes get emotionally close to each other, and that's what's going on here with Beebs and Shrike, and you're all just sleeping on it. Link should be popping up here on screen and in the pinned comment down below, so I'll see you guys next time.